Welcome everyone to 5 data integration techniques to improve your Excel data. Today I'm joined by both Sarah and Kaylin, and I'll pass things over to Sarah to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and I'm a technical support specialist here at SAFE. I work primarily with the FME Forum product, and you can find me doing demos around the FME community, working with cases and doing webinars such as this one. I'll hand it over to you, Kaylin.
Good morning, I'm Kaylin. I am actually on Sarah's team, so I'm also a Forum support specialist, and yeah, you can find me on the community or in cases.
Excellent, thank you both. And we also have Evie on the back end joining us today. So if you do have any questions at all, please do drop those into the questions tab as we go through here. You can keep letting us know where you're tuning in from in the chat. And then we do have a poll coming in just a couple of slides. So that polls tab is what we'll use for that. You can also share your emoji reactions with us during the webinar as we go here. Love to see those. And we have a help button on the bottom left for 4 simple troubleshooting steps. So if you have any audio or video issues, you can click that help button. You can also download the deck to follow along live with that download button on the top right. All right, and that brings us to our first poll here. So I'll go to the polls tab and launch that now. We'd like to know, how frequently do you use Excel in your daily tasks? So a few different options there, and we'll give everyone a minute here to place their votes.
Looks like a lot of people use Excel every day.
Yeah, it actually looks like most people have voted now. So every day and a few times a week, clearly Excel is very relevant to your day-to-day, if not every couple of days work. So that's great to know. I know for myself too, every day.
We love our spreadsheets.
Yes. Okay, with that, I will get our presenters to turn off their webcams, just so we can save on some bandwidth for the rest of the webinar. And I'll hand things over to Kaylin for our agenda.
Hello, so we're going to start off with our agenda. So this is just kind of what we're going to be covering today. So why do FME and Excel make sense? We'll kind of look at some equivalencies between FME and Excel. We'll run you through 5 demos, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some Q&A. So let's start off with the question, why Excel and FME? Or perhaps a better question is, how do Excel and FME work together? So FME is really well designed for completing, integrating, and automating tasks to save you time. And we're going to show you how that can be done in a flash demo. So in the next flash demo, we're going to use FME to split a spreadsheet into multiple worksheets based off of a status attribute. The first thing to notice is that we have a whole bunch of different attributes around business name, business key, license key, and we have this status field, and this is telling us if our license is issued or not. So you can see we have most issued, but we have a few canceled, and so that's what we're going to use to kind of split the spreadsheet into multiple sheets, because right now it's one big lump of data. So coming to FME form, we're going to start by adding our reader. And so you'll notice when we add our reader, we have all of those same attributes that we just saw in the spreadsheet, including that status attribute. So because we want to split the spreadsheet based on status, we're going to go ahead and add a test filter. Now in this test filter, we're looking for different status values, and we're going to route features to a spreadsheet depending on this status value. So we would like one spreadsheet for out of business, in business, and then dormant licenses. So we're going to go ahead and start to add our writers. So we'll have one feature type for each of these output ports. So we have out of business, in business, and then dormant. So we're going to go ahead and run, and we'll see how FME kind of handles this and what our output looks like afterwards. Our log file will let us know when the translation is finished. Okay, and then if we take a look at our new spreadsheet, we'll notice it has a new name, license by status. And we've now successfully split one spreadsheet into 3 different spreadsheets based on that status attribute. Okay. So just going to switch back into the slides. Before continuing on, let's take a moment to thank our data providers. So most of the data, I think except for one, is going to be using data from the open data portal from the City of Vancouver. So thank you. So most people are comfortable in Excel. However, repeatedly working with multiple large data sets can be time consuming. And this is kind of where FME can shine through. So FME is one platform with 2 technologies. FME Form is the authoring environment where you're going to build out your data integration workflows. These workflows can then be published to FME Flow as jobs to be automated. We offer multiple different deployment options for FME Flow, whether it's on-premise or in a private cloud. And we also offer FME Flow deployed in a fully hosted AWS cloud environment called FME Flow Hosted. So this slide is kind of just touching on our global reach. We have FME users and partners all around the world working together to solve data challenges. We started very GIS focused, so geospatial data, and then over the years we responded to our customers' needs. And now we support over 400 different data types in FME. From geospatial data through to location intelligence, our goal was to enable you to use your data when, where, and how it's needed, regardless of where it's stored or the source. So how does FME enhance Excel data? So FME is not meant as a replacement for Excel, and instead it should complement or enhance the Excel experience. And we kind of came up with 3 ways we think FME accomplishes this. Firstly would be the reusability. So FME is great for tasks that are similar and repeatable. For example, if you have a clerk who manually merges checks for null values, manually merges the same weekly report together, or updates a report every time an asset has been checked, you should consider a workflow-based tool like FME because one workflow can be reused over and over again, and it can be automated. Second is the visual aspect. So have you ever received a large Excel sheet from a colleague but can't figure out what calculations they did to get to their answer, or what reports they merged together to come up with their output? So a visual tool like FME will allow you and other staff members to easily visualize each step taken in the process, which can improve discussion and collaboration between staff and departments. So this is really highlighting FME's feature caching functionality, where you can kind of see how your data is changing at each step in the workspace. And then the last would be the shareability. And this is kind of around the idea of reducing a request between staff or between different departments. So staff often need help from IT or BI staff to download data that's been stored in their organization's database or data warehouse. Often they either don't have access, being permissions, or they don't have the SQL skills to do it themselves. So creating and sharing things like FME Flow apps where you can build no-code web apps and share them amongst staff or departments is kind of a quick way to get the reports to the people that need them. So before jumping into the rest of the demos, we're going to kind of go over what Excel vocabulary and what FME vocabulary is. So in Excel, a spreadsheet or a workbook it might be the equivalent to a reader or a writer data set. So digging down further, a worksheet or a named range is going to be represented by one feature type. So for example, here we have 2019 business owners and 2020 business owners, and they're represented by 2 different feature types on the FME canvas. So a column in a worksheet is an attribute, like how we just saw that status attribute on the spreadsheet and then on our feature type. And then lastly, a row in a worksheet is the equivalent to a feature in FME. So we're going to show you 5 demos today covering a range of topics. We're going to start off by actually expanding on that flash demo we just saw. We'll be doing some joins and fanning out the data. Next, we're going to refine that workflow further by adding some formatting and validation to the Excel sheet. Sarah will then show us a demo about how to integrate multiple data sets by writing to a database and bringing in other data like a shapefile, for example. The 4th demo will be a dive into pivot tables. And lastly, we're going to show you how you can automate your data on FME Flow. So without further ado, I guess we can jump into the demos. So this is kind of going to be a basic demo and just showing you how to do really simple operations in Excel, or even the same kind of operations that you're already doing in Excel. So here we're going to be reading 2 sheets of Excel data, and this is going to relate to business information and then licenses for those businesses. So it's going to look very similar to the first data set we looked at. We'll be looking for business that are actively using a license but have not paid their license fee yet. Now we're going to jump into the demo. Awesome. So I'm actually going to disable feature caching just to make this workspace go a little bit faster. And I'm going to go ahead and run the workspace while I explain what's going on. So we have these 2 business licensing sheets. And so we can see that the one sheet only really has business information on it. And then the licensing sheet only has licensing information. The goal here is to look at one feature that has both the business and the licensing information on the same feature. So to do this, we're going to be using a feature joiner. And a feature joiner in this case is going to be doing the same arithmetic or the same analysis that the VLOOKUP does in Excel. So here the feature joiner is going to join the records from the left and the right spreadsheet using a unique identifier. So in this case, license RSN exists on both spreadsheets, and we'll be using this as our unique key. From here, we're going to go to a test filter, and this is where we're going to conditionally route values based on a couple of different things. So firstly, we're looking to see if the fee has been paid. So if the attribute is missing, we know the fee has not been paid. And then the status should be issued. So we want to know what licenses are being used but have not been paid for. If the licenses have not been paid, we're going to route this to a sorter, and that's so that we're going to sort by date. And so the longest outstanding payments will be shown at the top of the spreadsheet. Where the licenses have been paid, we're going to send this to a statistics calculator, and we're going to group by status. So we're looking to see how many different statuses have actually paid and what the total mean or the average fee that they're paying. You'll notice now we have 3 different feature types. So here we're writing all of our unpaid licenses to one feature type. We're writing a license summary with the summary report from the statistics calculator. And then we're actually doing a fan out here. So in this workspace, we have 2 different fan outs that are going on. We have the dataset fan out, which will be splitting the data by the status value. And then we also have a dataset fan out. So if we come to the writer over here, we can see we've set a fan out expression that will leverage today's date and add it in the file. So a dataset fan out will produce the number of output datasets, each of which will have a number of layers created by the feature type fan out. If we take a look at what this looks like on the output, so you'll see I've run this a couple of times, apologies. We can see we have multiple sheets spread out by that status, and then we also have a summary table. So we have our license fee summary and then unpaid licenses, and then we'll have all of those attributes from the status with their corresponding features. So kind of taking a look at what we just did, we used a feature joiner to merge with a unique identifier. We added a test filter to conditionally route features to the appropriate feature type. We used a stats calculator to create a quick summary or a report, and then we used feature type fanouts to actually restructure our data. So again, we have multiple transformers that will kind of act or mimic that VLOOKUP in Excel. So whether that's a feature joiner, feature merger, or database joiner. And then feature type and dataset fanouts can be used to systematically split data. I'm going to hand this over to Sarah. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kaylin. So in the second demo here, we're going to take that data set from the demo that Kaylin just presented and kind of refine it a little bit further. So first, we're going to validate our attributes, we're going to add some color coding and categorization, and I'm going to show you how to do that using validation tools and how to add stylization using the Excel styler transformer. And at the very end of this, we're going to upload that spreadsheet to SharePoint Online. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, and what we're looking at here is actually the final output. This is the spreadsheet in SharePoint Online that I'm just going to quickly run through. Then we'll go into the workspace and we'll come back here at the very end to kind of take a second look. So this is our table here. This first tab here is color coded for status, and that matches the second sheet here with the license status information. This last tab here is the data error report, and this just shows the attributes that didn't pass the validation checks, so we can then go back in and kind of take a second look and fix these up. Over to the workspace now. It starts off in the same way as Kaylin's workspace did with our business metadata. I'll just go click in here and point out we have a business name attribute as well as a website attribute. And later on, I'm going to show you how you can insert this website for each business name so that the business name attribute becomes a hyperlink, and then you don't need the website attribute anymore in your final output. The license details, again, kind of the same thing we saw in Kaylin's demo. We've got license number and number of employees, as well as all the other associated information. Here we're using that feature joiner to join the two data sets together using that license RSN attribute as a key, since both data sets have this attribute. So you typically want to use an attribute that both data sets have, and you can always add more join conditions as well. So all our data has been joined. We've got business name, website, as well as number of employees and license number, so that's all good. Moving on to this next bookmark here. So first, we're going to use the statistics calculator up here to summarize the fees per status. And we did this by doing a group by and grouping by status, and then getting a total count. So if we look at our output here, we're left with three attributes with each of the statuses and the total count of each attribute. Down here in this attribute validator, we are going to validate some attributes, as the name kind of implies. So we first want to make sure that house, postal code, and street all have values. We want to make sure that the postal code is in the correct postal code format. So one uppercase letter, one digit, another uppercase letter, etc. And we just kind of put this logic together using regex. We want to make sure that the number of employees is the integer data type and is a value between 0 and 5,000. We want to make sure that the expired date is in the date format and that the status attribute is one of these values. So anything that passes this validation we'll leave alone, but anything that fails this will be written out to that data error report. Down here is where we create those hyperlinks for the business names. So you can see here that I've renamed the business names attributes to business name.hyperlink and set the value as the website attribute. So now when we write this out, the website will be hyperlinked to each corresponding business name. And then we've just removed the website attribute because we don't need that anymore. Over in the sub bookmark, we are filtering and styling all the data based on status. So first we've used a test filter to filter out based on status. And we actually did the exact same thing up here. So these two bookmarks kind of do the same thing, just with the different data sets. So this Excel styler lets you style rows or individual cells in your spreadsheet. So you can specify a number format, font and font color, color or pattern for your cell or cell row, including your cell border. Down here we have text alignment options, as well as cell protection in case you want to lock or hide any of your cells. In this last bookmark here, we are using a feature writer and a SharePoint connector to post our results up to SharePoint. So we're using a feature writer instead of a regular writer here so that we can do some post-processing and route the output data, which actually first has to be written to my local drive up to SharePoint. So going into the feature writer here, I just wanted to point out one other way you can introduce format into your Excel sheet is through this user attributes tab. You'll want to make sure that your attribute definition is set to manual so that you can actually edit everything in here. And if I just come down here and show you, we have this custom formatting setup, which will highlight any cells where the number of employees is equal to 0. Over in the SharePoint connector, to set this up, I just had to add my SharePoint web connection, which has my account credentials, and this file to upload field points to the destination on my local file that the feature writer wrote the Excel file to. And then we can write all this up to SharePoint Online, which is what we saw at the beginning here. So you can see this license fee summary tab gives us the numbers of businesses per status. Over here in this license status tab, where all the businesses are, we have color coding per status. And if we scroll to the end here, you can see that our number of employees column is in this red color if the number is 0, otherwise it just stays as black. And lastly, we have that data error report with the problematic attributes that we can go in and fix up. So just to summarize what we just saw, we used an attribute validator to create validation rules and QAR attributes. We created hyperlinks for business name attributes using a URL attribute. We styled our spreadsheet based on status and the number of employees. And we uploaded our Excel file up to SharePoint Online at the end of all this. Couple tips for you. The Excel styler is a fantastic transformer to use for styling your Excel data. As we saw, you can apply fonts, colors, or formatting either to individual cells or even an entire row. Data validation, we always recommend doing data validation whenever you can because, of course, you want to make sure that the data that you're working with is good and in good quality. In this demo, we showed off the attribute validator to do that, but there are lots of other transformers that you can use too. I know the tester is a super popular one, or if you're working with kind of spatial components, the geometry validator is a really good one to start with. And last tip here, I mentioned this a little bit during the demo in that SharePoint connector, but setting up your web connections and keeping them organized will go a long way. You can use your web connections across all your FME instances on your machine, or you can also export them and share them with others as well. Right, for our third demo here, so one of the strengths of FME is the ability to read in and integrate multiple data sets. And this just lets you eliminate data silos that keep you from using data that might live in a different system or a different format and really be able to use them to their full potential. And so far, we've really been focusing on creating translations that involve Excel data, but we wanted to show that we can integrate Excel data with other data sets too. And that's what we're going to focus on in this next demo. So we have some business and school data that don't have spatial components to start with. So we will need to create that so that we can then do some spatial analysis with them. We're going to be integrating the school and business data, which are both in CSV format to begin with a parcels data set, which is made up of polygons. Right. So this is our third workspace here. I'm just going to zoom in. We're going to start up in this bookmark here. So we have our source data here, and in this first bookmark, we have the Excel sheet from the previous demo, the one that we wrote up to SharePoint Online. And I just used that SharePoint connector again to download the CSV back into a repository, and then the feature reader to read it into the workspace from that repository. So just a really quick introduction for those of you who don't know, the feature reader serves the same purpose as a regular reader, except it allows you to do kind of some upstream processing before you read in the data. So in our case, that upstream processing was downloading our Excel sheet first before we can read it in. So some of these businesses are liquor or cannabis stores, and we want to see which one of those are close to schools. And that way we can kind of be sure to check on these stores a little more to make sure that they're not selling to underage children. Down here is our polygon shapefile, and that just contains neighborhoods and neighborhood names in the city of Vancouver. So you can see our neighborhood names here. And last but not least, we have the CSV of school districts that I've read in straight from the City of Vancouver's open data portal. And that looks like this. This is how it looks in FME. It's got all the same information. And to read this in, I just copied and pasted that CSV link from the open data portal. So here we're getting the most up-to-date information from the city. In this next bookmark here, we are first creating some geometry for the business licenses using a geocoder and the address data that we have in this data set. So if I just show you really quickly, we have all this address information here, and we just plugged all that into our geocoder, and it will be able to create a point for us that way. So if we look now, we now have some point geometry associated, and that just maps out kind of where all the businesses are. So then we can then use that to find out which neighborhoods each point is located in by doing a point on area overlay using this very aptly named point on area overlay transformer. So we can see which points fall into which polygon boundary, and then we can output the points with the matching neighborhood information joined. So now it's got the name of the neighborhood here. Down here, we also need to create some geometry for the school data, and we're going to do this a little bit differently. We're very fortunate that this data set contains coordinate information in this geometry attribute. So we can plug that straight into our geometry replacer, then set the coordinate system. And with that, we very easily have created some location points for all of our schools here. And now that we have geometry created for both of these data sets, we can then compare the proximity of our businesses to our schools. So this is the geographic neighbor finder. It's green because it's a custom transformer from our FME hub. And this just means that it doesn't come with FME automatically, but you can very easily search for it and download it from your quick add window. So if I just look up geographic neighbor finder, you can see it's right here, and you should be able to just hit enter and download it from here. And obviously I already have it downloaded, but you can just download things from the FME hub straight from your quick add window here. So this transformer is going to compare our two sets of points to see if one falls within the proximity of other within 150 meters. And that 150 meters is something that we had set in here. And so it's going to output the business points that are found within 150 meters of a school. And it's also going to merge that school's attributes to the business attribute. So if I go in here, we can see we've got some business names here. And if we keep scrolling down, we have the name of the school that is within 150 meters of it. Lastly, we're going to use an attribute manager to create a new attribute called school proximity. And to populate it, we're going to use conditional values. So this is kind of like a tester, except it's built into the attribute manager. So If all of these conditions are true, so if it's a cannabis or liquor store, has a distance of less than 150 meters to a school, and the distance value has an attribute, then it's going to receive a yes attribute value in this school proximity attribute. And otherwise, it's going to leave the attribute value blank. So you can see here, a lot of these businesses don't fall under that category, but the ones that are labeled yes. And lastly, we're going to write this all out to an MS SQL database where it will live and can then be used by others. And we can, of course, run this workspace again if we get any new data. It'll do the same set of transformations to eventually kind of end up in the database again. Or we can obviously switch out the data sources or the end destination. So there's lots of kind of possibilities and flexibility to customize your workspace whenever you need to. Right, so just to summarize this demo here, FME can read in data from SharePoint as well as write it out. We can also extract data straight from a website using a URL to get the most up-to-date data possible. And then we can create spatial references for all of our data as long as we have either an address or coordinates, some kind of spatial reference to work with. We can use transformers from the FME Hub to further kind of enrich our workspaces, including downloading and using that geographic neighbor finder to do some neighbor matching with two data sets. Conditional expressions can be used to dynamically set attributes, and we can do all that from the attribute manager. And last but not least, we can write our data out to an SQL database where it can then be accessed by others or updated whenever we need to. Some tips here. FME, as Kaylin kind of mentioned at the beginning, got its start working with spatial data, and we're still pretty strong in the space today. So there are lots and lots of tools and support for working with spatial data. There's also really great functionality for web sources or databases. So we really encourage you to try out integrations with your favorite data sources. If there isn't a dedicated reader or connector for the data source that you like, you can also try out APIs, which can connect to web sources as well. So there's always some way to connect to your data. Conditional attributes are pretty easy to set up with logic, and they're really great ways to kind of add some more complexity to your filtering and transforming your data. And our next demo will be on pivot tables and reports. So over to you, Kaylin.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of look at a few different ways that FME can use the Excel knowledge that you already have. So for example, Excel has great tools for creating charts from pivot tables, and FME can actually leverage this. So the objective of this demo is to kind of show you how you can continue to use your Excel and FME expertise in conjunction with one another. So we're able to kind of combine our skills here to create dashboards or reports that suit our needs. So we're going to be reading a weather file from NRCan and kind of using a template to rearrange and remap our data. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll hop into our workspace here. Okay, so let's kind of first start off by getting familiar, kind of recognizing what kind of data we're working with. So this data set is coming from NRCan, and we have a whole bunch of 40 years actually worth of snow and rainfall value data. So it's going to come in per month, and this is kind of what it's looking like. So you can see we have our precipitation type, whether it's precipitation, rain, or snow. And then we also have the year it's being logged for, as well as the month. And so really what we're going to want to do here, instead of going through 40 years worth of data, is to use a pivot table or an Excel template to kind of quickly create a graph about the totals per month per year. So we're going to read in our weather data like we just have done here. And then we're going to do some simple calculations. So this attribute manager is actually creating an Excel formula. And so we have, if you've used the sum operation before, this is the formula that we're actually creating, and Excel will leverage this when we write to it. So as soon as we start writing, Excel is going to start doing those calculations and summing up our month's worth of data. So you'll notice this workspace is pretty simple, and that's because the power behind this workspace is actually coming from the Excel template. And so this writer is going to look a little bit different. You'll notice that our sheet name, we have our sheet raw data, and then we have our named range. And so our named range is kind of the bounds in which we're going to write to within Excel. And so our named range can be found in our template file. So we'll notice that we're pointing our writer at a template here, and it's in a user parameter. So let's go take a look at that user parameter. User parameters are things that the author or the runner of the workspace will be prompted for at runtime. So we have date time options. We can, for example, submit or kind of apply files. So here, let's take a look at our template. We're going to open this in Excel. And I actually want to show you where you can figure out or where you can find your named range. So here we have our raw data sheet. And so this is what we're writing to in our Excel writer. And so we can see we have this weather table name box at the top. So if we go to formulas and then name manager, we'll actually be able to see our named range. And this is really, just defining the range at which we would like FME to write or kind of populate. So once FME populates this named range, we will start to see these values reflected in the pivot tables and the summary charts downstream. So right now, these values aren't reflected by what we're writing, but they will be. So if we go ahead and we run that, we'll actually see an updated graph, and we'll see an updated set of raw data as well. Awesome, so it's actually quite fast. We have our weather data for output because our precipitation value ends in 2020. And we can see we have a new set of raw data, and we have a updated chart. So jumping back into the slides. So yeah, we can leverage our existing knowledge. So for example, we can actually apply Excel syntax and Excel formulas within FME itself that will actually be executed in Excel later on. We can work with charts, pivots, and maps even, if you can believe that. And really the goal here is to avoid cutting and pasting. So that template file, instead of manually going through 40 years of data, we can kind of quickly summarize it with just a template. So fourth, we can use the statistics calculator to summarize mass amounts of raw data. And we can create charts within and outside of FME. So we have the chart generator in FME, or we can even use Excel and Excel templates to create charts and graphs. So just a couple more ideas. Excel actually is quite limitless. We can add 3D maps. We have images that we can embed, like the hyperlinks you saw with Sarah. There's a lot that we can do with Excel. These are just kind of very basic demos. And we'll bring it off to our last demo, automating our reporting with FME Flow.
All right, thanks, Carolyn. So in this last demo, we're going to be taking a look at automating our reporting. And our goal here is basically to create a kind of mini BI report using Excel. We're going to make use of Excel's 3D maps and pie charts capabilities. And then we're going to take things a little further by adding kind of a self-serve or automation functionality using FME Flow. So this just lets even users that don't know how to use FME, they would be able to kind of plug in their data set and get a report back almost immediately. Over to the demo now. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so in this workspace, we are making use of a template file, and that can be found in our feature writer here, and it's just plugged in using this template file field here. And I know someone in the kind of chat asked about formatting the header row for attribute names. You could use a template file for that as well. You kind of go set it up and plug it in here, and then you'd be able to apply styling to it that way as well. So this workspace takes our input business licenses, which looks like this. You can see kind of a wall of text. We've kind of seen this spreadsheet before throughout this webinar, and we want to build up a summary report that looks something like this. So in this report, we have a pie chart that shows all the business types, so you can kind of see at a glance what the distribution is. And we can also create a 3D map to see things from a bit of a different angle. So if I open this up, this is our kind of 3D map. It's, of course, interactive. You can scroll around and see your data. You can also change your data view, so you can change it to a heat map or a bar chart, whatever chart kind of works best for your data. So that's what this workspace creates. And you can always run it with new data whenever you need a report. But we can also publish this workspace up to FME Flow and run reports from there without having to directly use this FME Form workspace. And there are two ways that you can go about setting this up on FME Flow. The first is going to be using a Flow app, and the second is using an automation. So I'll talk about the Flow app first. And if we open this, so this is my Flow app. If you want something that's kind of self-serve to have users be able to upload their own data sets and have the app return a report, or even something like having a user upload a data set to be processed and then submitted elsewhere for someone else to use, those are some examples of some really good use cases for Flow apps. And the key there is kind of that self-serve data streaming piece. So in our example here, we've set things up so that users can upload a file, such as a spreadsheet with business licenses, and have the results streamed back to them almost immediately. So I'm just going to upload my file here. And so it's just doing its upload thing. Once it's completely uploaded, I can hit this run button, and it will run the workspace that I had just showed. I already have it loaded up, so we don't have to wait for that. It doesn't take too long, but just had it prepared here. And this is what it returns. So this is my report. It's got the pie chart just like we had in my Excel file, and it's also categorized by business type. And the cool thing here that you wouldn't find in Excel is that you can also kind of cross things off here so that you're only seeing the categories that you're interested in seeing. So a bit more interactiveness here, which is kind of cool. To add on to things here, you can also download the report. So if I click on this download link down here, it will open in my tab. And I have this loaded up too. As you can see, it kind of looks exactly the same as how we saw in Excel, and I can just download it from here. And this piece of the kind of Flow app works because the spreadsheet is written up to an existing file in a public drive. In my case, it's Google Drive, but you can also use something like SharePoint. And you'd want to make sure that you keep it as that file, because the Flow app link is going to keep getting the file from that location. So if you do set up something like this, just make sure that you're using kind of a file link that won't be changing anytime soon. So that was an example of self-serve summary reports and data streaming using Flow apps. The second thing you can do with Excel reports is automations. And this is a really great feature if you want to be able to specify an action and a response, something to kind of trigger downstream actions. So this is our automation. This green square here is the trigger, which in our case is a directory watch. The orange square is the action that happens in response to the trigger, which in our case is running that FME Form workspace that we just saw. And the two blue squares here are external actions that happen as a result of that action. So in our case here, we're doing email notifications. There's also other triggers that you can use. You can also do other directory watches like S3 buckets here, SNS, I think Dropbox is in here, as well as email. Webhooks is another really popular one. Lots of options here for you to incorporate triggers. And at the end, there are some options for external actions as well, kind of similar to the first menu. You can send out an email, upload the result to an FTP or Dropbox, etc. So I'll go ahead and start this automation now. And then we can go and upload a file into this directory that's being watched. So I'm just going to upload that here. You can see it's just uploading in the corner here. So I've set this automation up to check this directory every 5 seconds. And this is just a local directory on my FME Flow hosted instance, but you can set it to whatever directory your FME Flow instance has access to. So you could even do like a local C drive, for example. And so once the directory notices a new file in the directory, it's going to run that report creation workspace that we saw in FME form earlier. So if the workspace runs successfully, then a success email will get sent out to the stakeholders. And if it fails, then a failure email template gets sent out to maybe an automation author or your FME manager. So either way, everyone involved is kind of kept in the loop of what's going on. In the success email, let's check my email. There it is. So this is the success email that we just received. You can see we've got the name of the automation here, as well as the file we uploaded and the date and time. And the other thing we did is attach the report here, which is then downloadable, and you can do whatever you need to with that. So if I just download that, you can see that it's the same report that we saw earlier. It's just loading. There we go. This is our report. The same kind of thing we saw earlier. If I enable editing here, we can then also do the same kind of 3D map that we had earlier. All right. So we just saw a lot in that demo, but just to kind of sum it up here, you can automate repetitive tasks and share that functionality with others. And there are many different ways that that can take shape. You can either set up a workspace app and share out that URL, which can be accessed by certain groups, or have it open to the public. Or you can do something like a directory watch, and anyone with access to that directory can upload their file and receive the results. And there's so many other kind of customizations that you can do with this. So a lot of these kind of things you can set up, the end user doesn't even have to know that FME is doing the heavy lifting in the back. And so combining FME and Excel can get you some really nice reports for whatever data you have set it up with. And as we've kind of seen throughout the whole webinar, you can do some pretty cool stuff by using the power of FME and Excel. Some last tips here. Automations are pretty easy to build. We've made it so that it imitates the drag and drop interface of FME form, but instead of readers and writers, you have triggers and actions. And Excel is a pretty nice, simple tool that you can use for some lightweight BI reporting using template files. And Google Sheets. I know there's a question in this towards the beginning of the webinar. So everything's kind of up in the cloud now. So we had to talk about cloud-based spreadsheets a little bit. We do have a Google Sheets reader and writer that can be found on the FME Hub and downloaded right from FME Form. Just go ahead and type in Google Sheets in your FME form and download the package. Then you just have to set up a web connection. And that would let you directly access your spreadsheets so that you can read, write, and edit straight in your Google Sheet. And just to wrap things up now, we saw a lot today. We went through 5 use cases to show how you can enhance your Excel data. We started with an overview in FME form, looked at the basics and how to do some summary reporting. And then we further refined that data with some formatting options and some data validation and writing up to SharePoint. We also saw how easy it was to combine other data sets and even incorporate some location data. On the reporting end, we created some nice reports and dashboards using pivots, charts, and 3D maps. And last but not least, we took things a little bit further in FME Flow by showing how we can create self-serve or automated reporting tools. You can do so much with FME and Excel, and just by taking advantage of FME's capabilities, you can make better use of your data and save time spent doing things manually. And more importantly, we really hope that we've inspired you and gave you some ideas of how you can have FME and Excel work together really nicely. Now for some resources. We have lots of tutorials, articles, and Q&A up on our website, and we've just highlighted a couple here to help you get started. If you're interested in diving deeper into Excel or literally anything else FME, do come and find us on the FME community or the FME Support Center. There's loads of resources available. Everything is absolutely free, and our community is so friendly. Now I'm going to hand things back to you, Elizabeth, to talk about a couple more resources and to wrap us up before the Q&A.
Awesome, great. Thank you, Sarah. So before I dive into these resources, I just want to note, if you have any questions that you still have on your mind, please do get those into the questions tab, and then we'll answer those live at the end here. There's been some awesome questions that have come throughout. So yeah, keep getting those in. All right, so I just want to speak briefly about our free resources. Get our ebook, Spatial Data for the Enterprise. We have a short link there. And then we have the FME Academy and Knowledge Base as well, which have guided learning at your fingertips and how-to demos through the Knowledge Base. I'll note as well that our FME Academy offers live instructor-led training completely free of charge, which is quite unique in the industry. In fact, incredibly unique. And then also our webinars as well, safe.com/webinars. So please do check those out. We have, some great new webinars that have just been uploaded coming up here, and then on demand as well. You can search depending on what topic you're interested to learn more on. And then we also have our podcast program. So if you're looking for some more audio-based learning, check that out over at EM360. And our peak of data integration now has the call for presentations open until the end of November. So if you do have a talk in mind to present at the conference, please do submit that. And you probably heard it here first, folks. Registration opens September 17th. So just over a month out. Very exciting. In terms of next steps to take, if you do have anything you'd like to chat with us about regarding your data and any solutions you're looking for, please do feel free to reach out to us, info@safe.com, and I'll promote that email on the side left here as well. And experience the FME Accelerator. So this is a 90-minute course free of charge, and it's a great place to get started with FME. Claim your community badge. So I will drop that code in the chat as well for those who are a member of the community. You can redeem that badge as a thank you for joining us here today. And if you aren't a member, we encourage you to check it out. It's a great place to gain insights from other users as well as experts. All right, and with that, we do have time remaining, a few minutes here for some Q&A. So I'll invite our presenters, and Evie, if you'd like to join as well on stage, and we can take a look through the questions here together. Lots and lots of great questions. I know Evie's a champ. She got to a lot already, which is awesome. Thank you, Evie.
Shout out to Evie.
Any that we might want to get started
with?
There's
a good one here. It says, what reader did you use to read data directly from a URL? So you can use an HTTP caller, but you can actually read URLs and local files directly in the Excel reader. So there's an option on the right-hand side of the dataset that you can drop down. It says select file and then select file from web. And you can actually specify a URL, connect to an S3 bucket, browse Dropbox, etc.
Yeah, in that workspace that I showed, it was just the CSV writer and sticking the link right in the the source CSV kind of field there. There's a question here about writing to other web drives like pCloud. I'm not sure if we have direct support to pCloud right now, but if that is something you're interested in, I'd encourage you to submit an idea for it. We do take a look at the ideas when we're working on development and what new features we should add. So please post an idea there so it's on our radar.
pCloud, it looks like it's just a cloud environment. You might be able to use the HTTP caller to actually add your authentication and connect to it that way, but it would be worth testing.
Mm-hmm.
Another one here, can you assign a cell to be a drop-down menu in cases of errors? I'm not really sure, but in the cases of errors, so users can manually select after outputting new table ranges. I think any drop-down type work would have to be done in an Excel template, and then FME would kind of populate that drop-down.
There was that Google Sheets reader and writer question, and whether they have the same functionality. I believe that the Google Sheets kind of styling capabilities are a little more limited compared to just kind of the native Excel or CSV readers and writers, just because I don't think we have kind of full capability to edit those from FME, but you can still kind of edit the cells, and I think most of the functionality should be the same.
There's one from Ian here. It says, is the functionality difference between using the geocoder and creating a vertex point different? I assume you're talking about the vertex creator. So the geocoder will just give you more options. So if you only have an address or if you have lat long, you can use both in there, or the vertex creator will kind of depend on that lat long value.
There's a question here on reading in a zip file that is downloaded from a website. I believe you can just stick in that zip file path straight into FME, and it'll just kind of read it in as normal. FME can unzip it for you and kind of open everything up that way. Really handy. There's also a way to write out to zip files if that's of interest as well. You can use a feature writer for that and just literally type in .zip and they'll zip things up for you.
I think that works on the normal Excel writer as well, actually.
Oh, sweet. Very handy. What transformer was used to output the Excel report onto the web front end? Yeah, like Evie kind of answered there, the HTML, what is it called? Pulling up the name here. The HTML report generator is what you can use to create a report. So if you open that, you can kind of add different stylizations to your web report, like a header. You can add some custom HTML, some charts, and that's where you can kind of configure all of that.
I can take this new question here. How do I claim the community badge? So with that link I sent to the community, you just have to scroll down a little bit, and then it's on the right-hand side where you can enter the badge code. Hope that helps.
Lots of questions. I love it.
Yeah, any others that I missed?
Just about the recordings and the workspaces, everything should be available by sometime shortly.
Yeah, usually later today, and if not, it'll be tomorrow morning. Everyone will have it tomorrow morning, our time, I should say.
And if there are any questions that kind of roll in a little late that we don't directly get to, we do follow up with people afterwards, so not to worry.
Yeah, and I think that's a good note to wrap up on. It looks like we've gotten to all the questions at this point, unless the team saw any others I'm missing. No? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so as Evie just shared, if you do have any questions that come to mind afterwards, do feel free to shoot us an email, and we'll also stay online for another minute or so, get those into the questions tab. If you do have a moment to fill out our webinar survey, we appreciate any feedback on the webinar. It helps us improve upon our program. And we hope you all have a great rest of your day. Huge thank you to Kaylin and Sarah for all your work in preparing the content for this webinar, and Evie for joining us on questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye for now.